This is the story of the one. As a maintenance supervisor at a manufacturing facility, he knows keeping the line up and running is a top priority. That's why he chooses Grainger. Because when a drive belt gets damaged, Grainger makes it easy to find the exact specs for the replacement product he needs. And next-day delivery helps ensure he'll have everything in place and running like clockwork. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Thanks for selling your car to Carvana. Here's your check.
Whoa, when did I get here?
What do you mean?
I swear it was just moments ago that I accepted a great offer from Carvana online. I must have time traveled to the future.
It was just moments ago. We do same-day pickup. Here's your check for that great offer.
It is the future.
It's the present and just the convenience of Carvana. Sorry to blow your mind.
It's all good. Happens all the time.
Sell your car the convenient way to
Carvana.
Pickup times may vary and fees may apply.
Operation Domination is underway. The ultimate game plan to dominate your NFL experience. With your hosts, Dan
You gotta be confident about your Achilles.
Chas Thornton,
Yeah, I mean, I got it.
and Adam LaRue. Don't hope to be great and dominate.
Woo! We're here for week one, baby. Welcome in to Operation Domination. Thanks for joining us to get you kicked off right with the new 2025 season. As always, I'm your host, Dan Mater, Chas Thornton, Adam LaRue in the building all season long. It's going to be absolutely fantastic. Make sure you're downloading Operation Domination on your favorite podcast app and go to the YouTube channel, Fantasy Football Advice Network at FF Advice Net, to catch all of our video content along with the networks. It's going to be getting you guys to be great and to dominate. By the way, this is not going to be the only episode that we do. I know we're 1 week throughout the offseason, but during the season, like tomorrow, I'll be recording with Dr. Brian Scott. We're going to talk about injuries to kick things off, and then I'll be on with Chas Filardi later on in the week to talk about some of the bets coming up. So we'll be dropping episodes on Thursdays, on Fridays, and on Saturdays. So 3 episodes a week you get of Operation Domination. Make sure you tune in for that. Now it's week one. So a lot of people, because we have players not on bye, we have a lot of players who are in fact healthy at the moment because you just drafted your teams, thankfully, that we got to figure out who you want to start, who you want to sit. Like there's some guys you drafted in the same tier that it's hard to make out exactly which direction you want to go. And everybody wants to get off to the right foot. Now, let me start off by saying this. It is not the end-all, be-all if you go 0-1 week one. It has no bearing whatsoever in you being able to win a championship because you didn't win week one. Don't panic. Don't freak out. But it is still nice to get off on the right foot. And that's what we're going to try to help you guys do. So I pulled some of the more popular star sit questions that seem to be out there, at least focusing on certain players that people are really thinking about. So our number one question that we have, PPR League, Ricky Pearsall or Xavier Worthy? And this is interesting because I have him pretty close to my rankings. I'm going to kick this to Adam first. I want to know what Adam's take here. Which one would you play and why?
I would play Xavier Worthy. I just think I have a lot more data to work with on Xavier Worthy at this point in time. To be honest with you, I think I would take the risk with Pearsall had the suspension not come in time for Rashee Rice. But with Xavier Worthy kind of having this to himself, I'm leaning that direction personally. I believe over under is a little bit higher in the Kansas City game, although it's marginal. I know that one's 46.5. I don't remember off the top of my head what the Seattle Niners one is, but
45.5.
Yeah, so marginally higher, nothing crazy. But yeah, it's just the lack of data. Also, Jennings just came back to practice a couple days ago. Just the whole thing for the Niners, I'm playing wait and see. Now, there's a lot to be gained on taking the risk for sure. Just me personally, I'm one where I'm hesitant to play rookies week one. I'm hesitant to play guys who, I didn't get the biggest sample size as a rookie, which is the case with Pearsall. Obviously, he did have a couple big games towards the end of the season, but so did Xavier Worthy. I wasn't the biggest Xavier Worthy guy coming out, but I am still personally leaning that direction right now.
Yeah, no, I hear you on that because we saw Xavier Worthy, what he could do down the stretch. He had 3 top 20 finishes in the playoff weeks, right? So everyone's remembering that recency bias kicking in, where he was lining up about 60% of the time on the perimeter, almost over 35% of the time in the slot. So they were starting to give him a little bit the in and out that you would get with Rashee Rice. And that's what really boosted his production down the stretch when you needed it the most. But on the other hand, you mentioned Jauan Jennings. He just got back. He did not practice pretty much the entire month of August. Remember, it was like that first couple days of August is when he went out. And because he came back in limited fashion, I do think he's legitimately banged up. Like, I don't think this was just a hold-in type of injury. I think we're actually dealing with something here. Now, he's expected to be good to go, per Kyle Shanahan. Take that with a grain of salt, if you will. Well, however, I actually think it helps Ricky Pearsall that Jauan Jennings is back, because now Seattle's not going to be able to just key in on Ricky Pearsall on the perimeter. They're going to pay attention to Jauan Jennings, and that is going to keep things more even between the two. It allows Pearsall to do more of the routes that I think the 49ers envisioned him to do in the first place, more of those Deebo Samuel get yards after the catch in motion type of things. And I think it actually opens him up for that. So for me right now, I have Ricky Pearsall at wide receiver 19, Xavier Worthy at wide receiver 22. It's close, but they're right there on top of each other. Like, yes, Worthy, he gets a matchup with the Chargers, which is like a real mid-pack matchup. Like, they were 16th last year in fantasy points allowed to the wide receiver position. They don't have a dominant cornerback. Their front seven's much better than their back, back seven. Front seven's much better than the back four, I should say, with them. And the other thing, what I'm looking at with Pearsall, he doesn't need a lot to blow up here. Like, keep in mind, the typical number one receiver for the 49ers gets somewhere between a 23 to 25% target share. Last year, in those games that you talked about, that Pearsall blew up, he had 18%. The efficiency of this offense surpasses the need for a ton of volume. So if he comes in here, Jauan Jennings a little bit banged up, you got Kittle and Christian McCaffrey. Let's say Pearsall gets 20%. Well, then he's still sitting on a larger share than when he even got when he went off last season. In this game against Seattle, Purdy's got a great history of letting up Seattle. This offense, whether it's a win or a loss, is going to be up in the air. We'll see. But they have a great history of lining up against this Seattle defense and just tearing them apart. Whether it was Pete Carroll, whether it was Mike McDonald, it hasn't changed. Well, Seattle made some adjustments to their defense this year. McDonald says he feels like he has his defense ready to go. We'll see. I don't really see the talent that a lot of people else see in the Seattle defense. I still question where the pass rush is coming from. I still question how elite of a cornerback Devon Witherspoon really even is. And Ricky Pearsall, more times than not, will be lined up opposite of Witherspoon to begin with. So he's already getting the more favorable matchup from that standpoint. So it's close, but I'm going to roll the dice on the more upside with Purdy having with Pearsall than with Xavier Worthy, because I still think if Travis Kelce comes in and he is in better shape, I don't think this is Travis Kelce we saw at the start of season last year. I think this is going to be a better version of that, in which case you're looking for Worthy to hit more of the big play. I don't know exactly how much of the Rashee Rice he's definitively role he's going to play. So I guess this is where it's just a little bit different for me. But again, I got them both in my top 24. Hopefully you'd have a chance to start them both. I don't know. Chase, with all that dumped on you, where do you come down on this?
It's a lot closer than I kind of originally thought it was, because you guys know, and I've been vocal about it with you, especially there, Dan, that I have not necessarily been a Ricky Pearsall guy. And I was big on Xavier Worthy after I saw what he could do late last season and what he did in those playoffs there for the Chiefs, as you mentioned. But the more I look at this, I think I agree with you that I feel like leaning slightly towards Pearsall here. Now, in my original rankings for this first week, I had Worthy ranked higher because, I thought, well, Rice isn't playing. They want to open up the pass game in Kansas City, as they've said. Hey, wheels up on Xavier Worthy. Let's go. But they have, I believe, other options in Kansas City that they can open that pass game up to. I think they can spread the ball around more than I think they will be able to in San Francisco. They still have Travis Kelce there. I've said it before, but they've got a healthy Hollywood Brown now, and they've got Xavier Worthy there. I wonder about how they're going to deploy the pass game in that backfield with the running backs. I think Brashard Smith might be able to find himself a role there, but I really don't see, outside of outside of having Pearsall and Kittle, and we know they're going to throw to Pearsall and Kittle, I don't see another wideout on that team over there that's going to be able to take anything away from Pearsall, especially in week 1. I don't care if Jawan Jennings is on the field or not, and I'm a Jawan Jennings guy, but the dude's been hurt seemingly for the last 6 years. It's an ankle thing. We're not sure what the truth of that was or whatever, but I agree with you that he takes away some of the coverage, or he at least maintains some of that like focus from that Seattle defense there. So I like what Pearsall can do. I think Pearsall is a more dynamic receiver anyway than Jawan Jennings, and I was not always in that camp, but I am now. I like to lean slightly towards Pearsall here because I just think that that's a direction that they're going to have to go. Whereas I think that Kansas City, they just have so many options available to them, even without Rashee Rice. They still have the better quarterback there, in my opinion, in Patrick Mahomes, but I think he's going to try and spread the ball all over the place because that's, I think, when he's going to be at his best. So yeah, it's weird. It's close for me, but I'm going to lean and gamble on Pearsall here.
Plus international game, plus on Friday night. Like, I think all those things kind of tied into play. So it's 2-1 for Ricky Pearsall. And Adam, you mentioned that game as far as like the over-unders for both those games go. The 49ers Seattle game was 47.5. It got bet down because people were going with the under.
Yeah.
So that's why I dropped the 45.5 there. Kind of interesting to me. Also kind of wanted to use that as a shameless plug. I am now on the Huddle. I just dropped my first article for those guys, future prop bets over there. So make sure you go to the Huddle and check that out. I'll be having a weekly player prop bet every Saturday, dropping for the Sunday and Monday slate games, my top 10 props. So make sure you go check that out. We can win you some money on the flip end. All right, so let's get back to these start sit questions. Rhamondre Stevenson or Caleb Johnson? This was a much more interesting conversation, I think, a week ago. But news-wise, I do think it's an interesting conversation now. So, Chase, let's kick it to you. If you got to sit there and look at Rhamondre Stevenson or Caleb Johnson, because maybe you went zero RB, or maybe this is a bad team with a flex desperation spot. I don't know. I mean, which way are you going to go?
Well, I mean, everybody wanted to see the shiny new toys, right? And they come into play on both sides of this equation here. I mean, you've got the shiny new toy and Trevion Henderson there in New England that everybody kind of, I think, in the fantasy world is hoping, or kind of assumes, at least a lot of people have, that he's going to usurp that starting position, or at least that number one role, from Rhamondre Stevenson. And then on the other side of things, we've got Jaylen Warren, who, myself included, I think we were all bored with coming into this season. And then they drafted Caleb Johnson. We all thought, oh, well, heck yeah, there we go. Caleb Johnson seems like a Steelers kind of running back. And Jaylen Warren's been a little bit underwhelming in terms of, what he's done in his career. So I think everybody thinks that the shiny new toys are the ones that are going to take the workload here. And honestly, in this first week, I don't see it that way. I see the old guard, and neither one of them is old, but the old guard in both places kind of taking the lead on it for right now. I think I see Rhamondre Stevenson not giving up that job as easily or as quickly as we all kind of thought he would. And likewise, Jaylen Warren, heck, they just signed him to a contract extension, dude. They just paid that guy. That doesn't sound like somebody that they plan to phase out of their offense anytime soon here. I've said it in the past that with Jaylen Warren, I think we all kind of, there's a feeling in fantasy world that he's a pass catching back more so, because they had Najee Harris, who I think we all thought and see as a hammer. Funny thing about that is Najee Harris had over 90, targets his rookie season, and showed that he can be a receiving running back. And Jaylen Warren, honestly, has not done a whole heck of a lot catching the ball. Take a look at his stats for the last several years, folks. He doesn't catch the ball a whole heck of a lot, or they have not asked that of him. So the roles that you think they're going to fill, you think it's going to be Caleb Johnson as a hammer, you think it's going to be Jaylen Warren as a pass catching back, maybe only, or as a more of a specialist. I don't necessarily think that's going to play out true. Like I said, I think I see Rhamondre Stevenson and Jaylen Warren taking, at least week one here, the bulk of the carries, the bulk of the important work. And with that, then in my estimation, comes the bulk of the fantasy points for this first week here. So until and unless I'm proven wrong, otherwise, I'm going to keep rolling with Rhamondre Stevenson and with Jaylen Warren, which means in this pairing, I'm going to roll with Rhamondre Stevenson over Caleb Johnson.
Yeah. First of all, just to get it out the way right away. Yes, I'm with you. Rhamondre Stevenson over Caleb Johnson. I think the interesting discussion here to have, and what everyone's trying to figure out, is how important is the initial depth chart release. And does it mean this is what it's going to be all season long? No, absolutely not. But what it does indicate to me is kind of to Chase's point. Jaylen Warren's going to have a significant role that is outside of just passing down work. And he's always kind of had a little bit extra of a role, but the idea was that Caleb would come in and take the Najee Harris role. Well, they extend Jaylen Warren. They make him the starter. Tomlin made a point to say how good Warren has looked. And frankly, the narrative around Caleb Johnson has been throughout training camp that the NFL game, as of right now, looks to be a little bit fast for the guy. And when I watched him in preseason, I know he played better in that second game. But even then, everything that I was fearful of Caleb Johnson, because as you guys know, I was not as big on Caleb Johnson as consensus was coming into the draft to begin with, was kind of confirmed throughout preseason. I saw a guy who did not have a quick burst, who was going to have trouble exploding through the line of scrimmage at the pro level. And that of a lot of his runs, his big runs especially, he could have driven a dump truck through those holes in order to have that happen. And that's not going to happen in the NFL consistently, especially with an Arthur Smith team when people know that you want to run the football and you're going to be running into stacked boxes over and over and over again. Now, again, this is not to say that Caleb will not carve out this role at some point during the season. But Kenneth Gainwell, the reason he's the number 2 is because of what he gives you on passing downs. He's a better pass protector. Aaron Rodgers is going to be real particular about who's next to him as his last man standing as for a blocker, because he does not want to get hit anymore at 40 years old. It's very, very clear. So, and that's the other thing that kind of concerns me for Caleb season-wise, not even just week 1, is how often is he ever going to get a shot at getting any kind of receiving work throughout this year? So in standard leagues, maybe you don't care, but half point and full point PPR leagues, his ceiling is real limited, even if his role increases past week 1. So I think that was the deeper conversation to have here. Adam, what's your reaction to the depth chart? What's going on with the Steelers? And then, of course, give your Rhamondre or Caleb for this week.
Yeah, I'll keep it quick on that last point. Is Rhamondre. I'm with you guys on the logic, and yeah, I think on both fronts. Look, I don't think it'll take that long for the youngsters in both situations to leapfrog the RB2, but in both situations, I think that RB1 might take a little bit longer than a lot of people expect, especially, Dan, to your point, for Caleb Johnson to pass Jaylen Warren. I think that is going to take significantly longer. I think Trey Henderson should get there within the month. I'm not overly worried about that. But even then, I think Rhamondre will be the quote unquote starter for the bulk of the season. I just think that touches wise, Henderson might catch up at least 50-50 sooner than later. But Caleb has had some rocky patches in the offseason and the preseason. And I think certainly the Steelers feel like they don't need to rush him. I think that the Patriots sooner than later are going to feel like they need to rush Henderson onto the field because they're going to need some playmaking ability. And I just don't think the Steelers are, he's just not the same type of back where they need, the Patriots need speeds and Henderson is their answer. There's ways to, get a bruiser onto the field or to run in between the tackles, which is what Caleb Johnson is going to be. They can fill that role other ways.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. It's one of the reasons why I wasn't as big on Trayvon Henderson too, to your Rhamondre point, because I do think it'll take a little bit longer than people are anticipating, but I do anticipate, like, of the two, Henderson will take at some point over, I think, the overall touches position. So I agree with you there.
He's explosive and he's looked good, but it's just the fact that Rhamondre's been there longer, and you're talking about a guy that's just coming into the league and has to get his feet underneath him.
And Josh McDaniels is never a big fan of rookies, at least not right off the bat. Right. That's been his history. All right, so let's move to our next question. We got to pick 2 for PPR. We got Tech McMillan, Travion Henderson, we just talked about a little bit, Xavier Worthy, and Ricky Pearsall, who we talked about earlier. So, Adam, I'll kick this to you. Who's your 2 that you're going to pick out of this selection?
Oh, it is tough, but for me, it is going to definitely be Worthy. I'm between Pearsall and McMillan. I have an ever so slight lean towards McMillan. That matchup is kind of interesting. I think it's an abusable matchup for McMillan. That game has been, I know the over under is probably about the same, but for that's a game that I want to take the over on, the Panthers in New England. So I'm leaning Tet, but I could very well hear the argument for Pearsall in that spot instead and be perfectly okay with it. But it is between, like, that's the conversation. Trey is not really in my thought process all that much.
No, I got you. And Panthers and Jacksonville, just so everyone's clear as far as that matchup goes. Yeah, I mean, Chase, you're probably going to hate me for this, but so with the pick 2 conversation, adding one running back into the wide receivers, I'm assuming this is 2 flexes or one wide receiver spot in a flex. It's one or the other. We're not talking about a second running back here. So in my mind, if TreVeyon Henderson's your third running back, which is what this question would lead me to believe, I kind of want to see how it shakes out in the Patriots back. I know it's the Raiders and there's a juicy matchup. It's hard, but if you really want to play TreVeyon, play him in a DraftKings lineup. We'll have the DFS cocktail hour on in a little bit. But for me, Ted's only my wide receiver 33. Like I got to see Bryce Young actually carry over his late season competency as an NFL quarterback before I'm ready to fully buy in. I get Adam Thielen was traded. I get Jalen Coker's on the IR. Ted McMillan's definitely going to be a primary target within this offense. There's no doubt about that. But McMillan is a perimeter threat. Bryce Young, that has not been his hot zone. His hot zone ever since he's been a starter has been the slot receiver. His primary target has been Adam Thielen for like 2 seasons and Jalen Coker at that point too. So that's where he's been going with the football because he doesn't throw it deep very often, or at least very accurately. And his living bread and butter is 0 to 9 yards over the middle of the field over and over and over again. I know everybody wants Dave Canales to turn Ted McMillan into the new Mike Evans like immediately. I got to see if Bryce Young can actually bring his competency over into this season before I can totally just buy in. I know the Jacksonville defense is a matchup that you're not scared of. This has nothing to do with that. I got to see it first before I can buy in. So for me, if I'm picking 2, it's going to be Worthy and Pearsall. Chase, what do you think?
Woo. Okay. Well, yeah, listen, I love you, but I'm going to have to pop another one here for this. Listen, we just talked about my feelings on Worthy versus Pearsall, and it's close. It's close, but I want to lean Pearsall. I think I want to take that, honestly, gamble. Like I said, we just talked about my feelings on TreVeyon Henderson and how I think what role I think he's going to play at least week 1 there. You know that I'm much bigger on Bryce Young than you are. And I understand your take. Your point is valid. The idea that Bryce Young hasn't necessarily been an outside receiver kingmaker down the field. But the thing is he knows where his bread is buttered. Yeah, his bread is buttered by Tetairoa McMillan, all 6'4.5" of him right now. And it doesn't matter if he wants to throw it over the middle of the field, the outside of the field, behind him, wherever. He can throw it to him for anywhere from the restroom in the locker room all the way to the end zone. It doesn't matter because that's his best receiver he's got available to him, even if everybody's healthy on that team. Tetairoa McMillan is going to be something special. You've got him at 33. I have him as a top 16 play this week because I love the idea of him against that Jaguars team. And I think, like Adam was saying, this is a game that I want to jump on the over on. I think there's going to be a lot of points scored here, and I might bring Tet's name up a little bit later on too in this show. For me, it's got to be Tetairoa. And then, like I said, if I'm taking that gamble with Ricky, I'm going to lean into that gamble on Ricky. I'm going to take Ricky Pearsall. So it's McMillan and Pearsall for me because I just think that there's too much meat to be had there on that bone, no matter where they are on the field and no matter how Bryce Young wants to throw it, because Ted's going to grab everything thrown his direction. So. Yep.
We already had the debate, so I'm not going to debate here, but I dropped that. We did this a couple seasons ago. We got to do it again this season. The showdown, bets each week and actually have the scoreboard going up. So you said you got him as a top 16 wide receiver. I'm at wide receiver 33. Would it be fair to say our bet would be Ted McMillan either is a top 24 receiver or not a top 24 receiver? Would that be fair?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So
he's either a wide receiver 2 this week or he's not.
Right. So McMillan either finishes
at least a wide receiver 2.
Yeah. Finish the top 24 receiver. Chase wins. If he finishes outside the top 24, I win. We'll keep track of that throughout the season. Let's get that going. Okay. So now our fourth question here, half point PPR. Now we're talking about Keenan Allen and Nick Chubb. So we got a couple old geezers that people are trying to figure out which direction do you go. Oh, it's not. First of all, it's not a decision I want to have to make, but I do know there's some 14 teams and 16 teams out there who may be making this decision. So, let me kick this to you. Which geezer are you going to go with?
Yeah, I just drafted an 18-teamer last night, which is hilarious.
Nelly.
Yeah, gross. It's disgusting what happens on the bench in some of those leagues. But at any rate, me personally, I'm definitely going Keenan Allen. Nick Chubb, I'm terrified to play in any capacity. Keenan, I can appreciate that at least like any other location I'd probably go Chubb. I'd be terrified, but I'd probably go Chubb. Keenan going back to a quarterback that he's familiar with, I think he can figure it out fairly quickly. And I think Herbert would like to have him. And this is a game that I know it's international, but it means so much. And I actually think that it being international plays to the Chargers' favor a little bit, just in the sense of like the Chiefs are the clear favorite here. So you add chaos. I think that helps the underdog to a degree. So I think that if you get 10 points out of either of these players, you are thanking God. So
yeah, I agree with that.
I'm taking Keenan Allen to get you those 10. Regardless, I mean, probably not in standard, but half point PPR doesn't matter. Like I'm taking Keenan.
Yeah,
Chubb, I love you. I don't know how we're seeing you start another game, to be honest with you.
No, I hear you on that one. That game, by the way, is fairly close. It's Kansas City is favored by 3 points, so it is a very close divisional game. Chase, let's get your take here real quick.
Yeah, I hate this question. So
as the old guy,
forget you for putting this on there. But I mean, yeah, hey, if this is a question that somebody out there is dealing with, I'm sorry. You should have probably done a better job the last couple of weeks here in your draft. Yeah, go, man. Now I'm actually, I will be on record as saying that I think that there's going to be a little bit more Dameon Pierce week 1 than I think a lot of people want to admit there's going to be. So yeah, I'm really torn on this. I mean, Keenan Allen's like wide receiver 60 something, but he's got an actual history with the quarterback that he's coming back to play with here. And it's still Keenan Allen. And I don't know if I can bet against that dude. I hate the idea of it. I don't want to discount Nick Chubb because he's a man among boys and I love what he's done in his career, but yeah, how much really is going to be left in that tank? How much are we really going to see? And like I said, I'm a little higher on Dameon Pierce than some people might be right now. Doesn't mean I love him, but I'm higher on him than some people. So yeah, I'm going to have to lean Keenan Allen. If this was standard, I would say no. If this was standard, I would go Chubb all day long. Half PPR or full PPR, I'm going to have to lean with the wide receiver.
I'm with you guys. Look, Nick Chubb is, as a starting running back, as of now, that's what we have. That's the data we have right now in front of us, that he's a starting running back. He's still outside my top 36. I mean, all the reports from camp were that he still looks slow. And he's coming off a season where he came back in the back half and had 3.3 yards per carry. Like, Chase, totally with you. We definitely could be seeing more Dameon Pierce than anybody wants to admit, because if he's that putrid, they're not going to stick to him very long. Not when you have a slew of other backs that are just basically there on a tryout basis anyway.
Yeah, I'm not a Woody Marks guy either. I'm not high on Woody Marks either.
And Woody Marks is pushed all the way down the depth chart too. So who knows what his role week 1's even going to be? He might be a healthy scratch for all we know, as far as down as he is at the moment. So who knows there? And Keenan Allen, you guys mentioned it. He has maybe he doesn't have the rapport with the offensive scheme, but he does have the rapport with the quarterback. More so than that, Trey Harris, who got banged up, did not overtake that spot like we thought he would earlier on. Quentin Johnson, we know what he is. We know what his role is going to be as that third starting wide receiver. They don't really have a tight end. Like Tyler Conklin's not a guy who's going to have a high target share here. It's Lat McConkey and Keenan Allen when they have to throw the football. And I know this is going to be a balanced attack, especially when you're talking about Greg Roman, but those are your two top targets. Keenan Allen, I have him a little bit higher. Well, actually, I have him quite a bit higher than consensus. I do have him in my 40s as far as the wide receivers go this week. So I do have him kind of up there where you do take that shot on Keenan Allen. Man, I wish he had better choices. All right, so last start question that we want to talk about here. Half-point PPR again. Stephon Diggs, Juwan Jennings, or George Pickens. Chase, go.
Yeah, again, I'm not a giant fan of this choice, but for me, it comes down to as I said before, I'm not necessarily convinced that Juwan Jennings is going to play a giant role in this game for the 49ers against the Seahawks this weekend here. So for me, this comes down to Stephon Diggs or George Pickens. And, when I look at this, I think, okay, we've got Diggs coming off of, an injury plagued year, and he's in a new place, and he's got controversies galore because of course he does. It's Stephon Diggs. But then we've got George Pickens, who's in a new place too. And he's going to have to get used to, what they're doing down there in Dallas. I'm not a George Pickens guy, but honestly, I think even though he's the number 2 receiver down there, I think I'm going to lean George Pickens here just because of everything that's been talked about here ad nauseum over the last week or so here with that Cowboys passing attack and going to have to pass the ball and throw the ball over and 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 over because they have an island of misfit toys, as someone so eloquently put it, at running back. And honestly, I said it earlier, right after the Pickens trade, I think I like the way that Lamb and Pickens complement each other in terms of the route tree, in terms of how they should be used on the field together. We know Lamb's going to get his, but if this team throws as much as I think we all think it's going to, and as much as they probably are going to have to, Pickens is going to have to get some as well. I'm not overly sold on Stephon Diggs. I want to see how he comes back from that injury. I want to see how he meshes with Drake May. I want to see how that entire New England pass attack shakes out before I put a whole lot of stock in any of the receivers there. We all know New England's history with wide receivers. It hasn't been great since Randy Moss left town. So I'm going to lean Pickens here ever so slightly.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I leave Jennings out of the conversation, kind of like you said. We're zeroing on Diggs and Pickens here. I have Diggs at wide receiver 34, Pickens at wide receiver 29. So I'm leaning a few spots there ahead with Pickens. And look, Diggs doesn't have a matchup you're worried about, right? You're talking about a Raiders secondary. It's got Jeremy Chin and Darian Porter and Eric Stokes. Like, there's nothing to be concerned about. But what I am concerned about is, despite all the positive reporting for Stephon Diggs throughout the summer, it's incredible that he's back right now. Kudos to him for making it back this quickly. He's still about to be 32, coming off of ACL. I want to physically see with my own eyes where he's at before I go ahead and make that decision. And the other thing, too, is that look at where you drafted these guys. George Pickens was going in the top 8 of rounds in the draft. Stephon Diggs was somebody who's probably getting around 9, 10, 11, somewhere in there, depending upon the size of your league. Like, you were taking him as a flyer, as a depth piece. You were picking George Pickens to be in that lineup to begin with. To your point, a good team can't run on the Eagles. I don't know how the hell the Cowboys are going to be able to run on the Eagles. So they're going to have to throw the ball a ton, plenty of volume for CeeDee Lamb, plenty of volume for George Pickens. They're going to have to take shots. So I'm with you. I'm going to roll the dice with Pickens. Adam, you got anything to add here?
Nope, don't need to make it any longer than we have to. I'm a little bit closer on ECR than how ECR has these guys spread out as far as Pickens having a sizable lead on Diggs. I have it a little closer. I have them like 3-4 spots apart, but nonetheless, it's Pickens. Like you said, I have to see Diggs before I believe it.
Yeah.
Start your studs. Start your studs that you drafted. Yep.
Sure. 100%. All right. So before we get into the DFS cocktail hour, I want to talk about some guys that we have ranked either well ahead or well behind of ECR. I'm going to kick this to Adam first. Who's the top guy that you have a big discrepancy with in your rankings, the ECR this week?
It's not necessarily my biggest discrepancy, but I think it's the most meaningful. And that is Jerome Ford, who I have at RB28. ECR, when I downloaded it last night, at the very least, had him at RB34. So it's only 6 spots, but to me, it's the big difference in the sense that 28 is right outside of RB2. It is a firm, like a must flex at minimum. He is in your lineups guaranteed. Versus 34 is getting into the territory of might lose out your flex spot. He might barely make your bench. And to me, he is a must play in a game that quietly, if I can pull it back up, Bengals Browns game is like tied for the 3rd highest over under on the week. Which
is so strange, by the way. I don't mean to cut you off right there, but just for a split second. The Browns have a good defense here, people. And the Bengals don't typically put up a ton of points in September, and they don't put up a ton of points necessarily against the Cleveland Browns. I just had to throw it out there because that line to me is screaming under. It's something I will talk about with Chas Filardi there on Friday night when we drop it on Saturday. But that's just weird to me. But go ahead.
I think it is an underplay. Don't disagree there, but I don't know if it goes under by a lot. I think it goes under, but like they're seeing something that I think a lot of people aren't and going at 47. Now, do I think it's closer to 42? Sure. But like, again, and it kind of to that point, the Bengals start slow and the Browns always play the Bengals really, really tough. I think this isn't a game where, the Browns are behind, like maybe they hang in there in garbage time, but like they're throwing in. Like, I think the run game is going to be able to play all game long, like with Jerome Ford. So we've talked a lot this offseason in the greater NFL sphere about the Bengals defense. So I don't think there's any questions to be had about the quality of that defense. They were a middle of the pack run defense this past season. They haven't done a whole lot to shore that up this offseason. I mean, one bigger rookie edge will help a little bit, but a rookie first week, don't think that's going to matter all that much. I think Jerome Ford is a must play if you have two flexes. Must play.
I'm with you there. Okay, Chase, who's your guy that you have a big discrepancy with?
My biggest discrepancy in my rankings as of right now is on your Washington Commanders in their backfield. Everybody has fallen in love with Bill Krosky Merritt, thinking that he's going to be the guy that just,
They're all hitting the panic button now.
Right? Because now all of a sudden he's 39th on the depth chart, and everybody who's actually been there for several years is ahead of him on the depth chart. Chris Rodriguez, I have as a running back 3 play this week at running back 35. His ECR is running back 53. So I've got him almost 20 spots ahead of where the ECR is, because I think, honestly, part of me wonders here now if we're going to see maybe a little bit of Austin Eckler like redux and like, will we see maybe flashes of what he was 3-4 seasons ago? But Chris Rodriguez has good metrics. When he's gotten a chance to play, he's performed pretty well for them. And he's listed higher on the depth chart than Bill Krosky is. So I've got Chris Rodriguez as a sneaky play here, sneaking into that running back 3 situation there, because I think that between the two of them, between Eckler and Rodriguez, I'm looking at the two guys who actually top the depth chart there. Between the two of them, I think Rodriguez is the one more likely to get goal line work, short yardage work. And I know they've got Jaden Daniels there, and I know he's a running quarterback as well. But when you're talking about who's actually going to get, the ball turned around and handed off to him, I like the idea of Chris Rodriguez way outperforming the idea of being running back 53. Now, it's anybody's guess as to how that running situation actually plays out this week, and we will all find out this Sunday afternoon. But I don't think that I think that everybody wanted the shiny new toy in Bill Krosky Merritt, and it doesn't matter what we all want. It doesn't matter what we all, hope and pray for. Reality is going to get in the way. And so we're going to find out the reality this Sunday. And the reality just might be an Austin Eckler, Chris Rodriguez, closer to 60-40 type split with McNichol and Bill Krosky sneaking in there. So I'm way higher on Chris Rodriguez than ECR.
I don't think McNichols actually works in there, but to your point, lead is Austin Eckler. Rodriguez has a short yardage role. So even if Krosky gets a healthy amount of workload, he's left between the 20s on early downs. It's not great for fantasy football purposes in that sense. All right, so we'll get to mine, and then we'll kick it off to the DFS cocktail hour. So for me, it's going to be Matthew Golden. I got him at wide receiver 26. ECR's got him at wide receiver 40. We don't have a ton of data. He is a rookie player, but he's been a rookie player who's been making plays all throughout training camp, and he's been one of the few, if not the only, wide receiver for the Packers that has actually practiced all throughout the training camp and not gotten banged up at one point or another. Romeo Doubs, Latavian Wicks, Jaden Reed, you name it. And with that, he's been able to get himself ready to play week 1 and beat out all those guys to be the starter across from Romeo Doubs here. We know he has the big play capability just based on his 40 alone. Jordan Love has sung his praise as far as how surprisingly smooth of a route runner he has been. And he's going to get lined up more times than not across from Terrion Arnold, who is part of that secondary of Detroit Lions last year. They gave the 5th most points to the wide receiver position. I like it here for a matchup. I'm playing him in DFS. I'm starting him where I can in my redraft leagues. So that's what I got going on there. But now it is time for the DFS cocktail hour.
Hells yeah. Welcome back to the bar, everybody. Glad to have you back for another season of the DFS cocktail hour here. We're going to make ourselves our own drinks this season. We're going to come up with our own cocktails here. I'm going to let you guys know, the ingredients, how to make them, how to shake them up here. We'll put that out to you on the social medias there, but also we're going to try to get you ready to win some money here in your cash game DFS lineups. Okay. So a reminder here real quick, what we're looking at when we talk about the DFS cocktail hour, we're looking at cash games here. So 50-50s, double ups, that sort of thing. We are not necessarily talking about tournament plays or GPPs where you're going to want to go like really contrary, to what the lay person is doing. We're going to go kind of chalky here, but we're trying to win you some money. It's boring. It's like playing the stock market versus buying a money market account. Okay. Yeah. You're not going to get maybe the giant returns or the possibility of giant returns, but I'm also not going to tell you to spend your retirement on the Powerball just because it's up to 1.3 billion. I'm going to tell you to put that thing in some safer investments. Okay. So we're looking at the DraftKings Classic game on the main slate. And this week, that means that out of 16 games, we're looking at 14 games. We're not looking at the Thursday night game. And this week, reminder for everybody out there, there is a Friday night game. The game Kansas City and Chargers that we've talked about is a Friday night game. We're not looking at the Thursday or Friday night game. But remember that when you set your lineups, that there is a Friday night game this week. Okay. So when we look at the betting lines, there's 3 games here that have touchdown plus favorites. We're talking about the Giants and the Commanders. There's a touchdown difference here. Thanks to our friends over at Sharp Football Analysis. The Cardinals are 6.5 point favorites at the Saints. And then we've got the Titans at the Broncos, and the Broncos are your winners this week at an 8.5 point favorite in that game. And then we've also got 5 games with over-under lines of 47 plus, like we've been talking about a little bit here. The Panthers and the Jags, the Lions and the Packers, the Bucks and the Falcons, the Bengals at the Browns, and the big hitter of the weekend is the Sunday night showdown between the Ravens and the Bills, has an over-under of 51. So those are the games that we're kind of looking at here in terms of trying to play and pull off the bulk of our plays here. Okay. So we're going to look at the bigger point totals for our passing game. And in our passing game, we're going to go with a Browns stack against the Bengals. And we talked about it before. The Browns always play really tough against the Bengals. When I look at the prices on the slate this week, I like the prices for the Browns against the Bengals, and I like how they allow us to build around them. So at quarterback, yes, we are going to go with a cheap Joe Flacco at 4,900. Okay. The Bengals last season allowed the 5th most points to the quarterback position. I don't see either one of Dylan Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders breaking through and having to play week 1 for crying out loud. At some point this season, we're probably going to see both of them. But week 1, it's going to be Flacco against the Bengals. He's going to be airing that thing out. And who's he going to be airing it out to? He's probably going to be airing that thing out to the Chief, David Njoku at tight end for 4,700. Okay. The Bengals allowed the most points to the tight end position last season. They were absolutely terrible against that position. And we've talked about it before. I'll mention it again here. We all know the story by now of how Wacko Flacco Flames' love affair with the Chief blossomed at the end of the night of the 2023 season there. So we're going to go with David Njoku and Joe Flacco. And the third part of that stack that we're going to do from the Browns here, we're going to actually include Cedric Tillman for 4,400 as opposed to going with Jerry Jeudy. If you paid attention to Cedric Tillman last season, he was really starting to light it up last season, right before he got that injury. I think the Browns are going to have to push the ball down the field to stay with this Bengals attack here. And I think Tillman can fill that bill for them. So we are going to start the base of our cocktail. The base of our DFS play is going to be the Brown stack of Flacco, Njoku, and Cedric Tillman. We're going to play back against that on the other side of the field with the number 1 player on the entire slate here in Jamar Chase for 8,100. The Browns were the 4th worst team against wide receivers last season. Okay. In his games against Cleveland last season, Chase caught 11 out of 14 balls. He had a touchdown in each game against them. He didn't have great yardage totals, but he didn't need great yardage totals against them because he was scoring and he was catching the ball a ton. And actually, when you check it out, his projection for the week, it actually plays as a pretty good value despite the fact that he's got that high price tag there. So Brown stack playing against Jamar Chase. The other game that we are going to look at then for our DFS lineups, and I'm not filling the whole thing out for you because you guys have to have a little bit of your own agency and take the bull by the horns, so to speak. But we are going to hammer on that Cardinals-Saints matchup. The Cardinals are road favorites, and I do expect them to play from in front. They're in New Orleans, okay? So give me James Conner at 6,100 against a porous Saints run defense that allowed the 5th most points to the position last season, okay? Reports of James Conner's demise are, in my opinion, greatly exaggerated. Although I am a Trey Benson fan, that's still James Conner's position to win, lose, or draw there in the desert. So then we're also going to take, because they're favorites on the road, we're going to take that Cardinals D against what might actually end up being, when it's all said and done, the absolute worst offense in the league. Okay. We know that they're starting Spencer Rattler at quarterback. The option behind him is Tyler Shuck, who is a rookie and not necessarily an overwhelming rookie at that. So we are going to hammer on that high over-under for the Bengals and the Browns with the passing attacks there. And we're going to hammer on the idea that the Cards are the road favorite in New Orleans there. So now, if you don't like those ingredients, before we get to the cocktail here, I'm going to let you know that you can swap out if you're not crazy about the Browns. And I get that some of you out there might not be because, hey, it's Cleveland. I'm a Cleveland fan. I get it. If it's my money, and I've done this already, I'm swapping out the Jags pass attack in Trevor Lawrence, Brenton Strange at that tight end position, and Brian Thomas. I'm swapping them out 1-for-1 across the board with that Browns pass attack. If you do that swap out, you can still play the exact same lineups, or just about the exact same lineups that you can play with that Browns pass attack in there. Either way, I was able to build lineups with these guys with CMC in the lineup, with DeAndre Swift rounding those lineups out. I was able to spend a lot of money because you're saving a ton of money using Cleveland and Jacksonville. Now, the cocktail that we're making this week, we're going to call it the opening kickoff. Okay. Because it's week 1. Of course we want to do an opening kickoff. So the opening kickoff is essentially some people call it a margarita. Some people call it a ginarita. We're going to make a margarita, but we're going to swap out gin for the tequila. Okay. So normally you would make a margarita with tequila and a citrus and a sweetener, and you go from there. We're going to actually use gin in this one. Okay. But where does the kick come in? This is going to be a good one for those weeks when we have a Europe game. We've talked about a Europe game this week, but you have those Europe games and they kick off in the morning. You need to get yourself awake in the morning. You need to get yourself going. If you're a guy like me, I'm not a coffee guy. I'm going to need some caffeine. So we're going to actually use Mountain Dew Kickstart as part of this cocktail to get ourselves going and wake up in the morning. While I mix this thing up, I'm going to let you guys talk about it here, Dan. I'm wondering if you guys are on board with the idea of going a little bit cheaper on the pass game side of things and for the base of our cocktail here, or are there other places that you want to be going? Okay. So while I mix this up, I'm going to be using some Death's Door gin here. We're going to use 2 ounces of that. So we're going to do a 1, 2, 3, 4 there. Okay. Then we are going to use an ounce of fresh lime juice there. We're going to use a 1/2 ounce of agave. And then we are also going to use 1.5 ounces, like I said, of the Mountain Dew Kickstart. And I'm using, because it's a margarita-ish drink, we've got the orange citrus here. We're going to use 1.5 ounces of the orange citrus Kickstart. Put that in there. We're going to mix that up. We're not going to shake it up because it's got all of that it's got the we don't want to make this drink and shake it up and have it blow out the top of the shaker here because it's got all of the
Carbonation
in it. Thank you. I had to open another drink to deal with your Bryce Young take earlier. So that's going to be our opening kickoff for the week. Dan, Adam, do you guys agree with the base of this DFS cocktail in that passing attack?
Go ahead, Adam.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting strategy. While you were putting that together, I checked out some lineup options kind of building with it. And to your point, I was able to fit in a Christian McCaffrey, a Khalil Shakir, who I love, was one of my ECR guys this week if we were able to get to it, a guy who I think is incredibly undervalued this week, and a controversial player of the show, Tedero and McMillan. So those three around that Browns lineup, and I would feel really good about that. So I think it's a good combination, save a lot of money and be able to have some undervalued guys in there, really strong running back group.
Interesting that you bring up Tedero McMillan, not to cut you off there, Dan, but interesting you bring up Tedero McMillan because if you swap out the Jaguars for the Browns there, then you can play Tedero McMillan back against that Jaguars team and get a piece of that and get another piece of that game as well with that over under. And again, that's going to allow you then to fill in your lineup with some of those higher priced guys. That's why I loved both of these lineups. But go ahead, Dan. What's your thoughts on this?
No, I'm with you more on the Browns side. To Adam's point, I mean, the books seem to think that's going to be one of the higher over-unders of the week. Now, we seem to think it's going to be more on the underside. But the whole thing of why you kind of get excited a little bit about Joe Flacco taking over for the Cleveland Browns was the idea that he could re-spark some of that magic he had back in 2022 and throwing the ball down deep. Now, he wasn't good for the Colts, but he still let it fly. And there was a lot of turnovers, which can lead to bigger shootouts. And Tillman, I think Tillman's the better receiver in the Cleveland Browns over Jerry Jeudy. I think he is the best receiver on that team. So I'm with you there. David Njoku was a top 5 tight end for me. So I like that stack more so than Lawrence, Strange, and Thomas going against Carolina. I'm not big on Strange being much of a points producer. And when you go again and put the salaries all together, the combination of the Browns actually allows you to do even more things with more bigger name type of players. So I'm with you so far on the basis of this.
Yeah, my only thing, like I said, my only thing about it was I'm looking to try and save some money here on that base so that we can fill in with some of those bigger guns like we talked about, like the CMCs, like the DeAndre Swift, like Khalil Shakir that Adam said he likes. But yeah, that I think that based on what we saw 2 years ago from Joe and from David Njoku and from the idea of being able to push that ball down the field, and hey, if he throws a couple of interceptions, he throws a couple of interceptions, but that just means he's got to throw it more when they get the ball back. I'm excited to play that Browns pass attack against a Bengals pass defense that, outside of the idea of the pass rush with Trey Hendrickson, leaves a little bit to be desired.
All right. So we have our drink, we have the core of our DFS lineup, and we have your week 1 preview just like that. Those drink recipes, we're going to try to get up Amber Phillips or at Amber Alert from host of the Queen's Ransom to try to get them on a t-shirt for you guys to be able to check them out and make those cocktails right off of that. So with that though, make sure again, you're downloading Operation Domination on your favorite podcast app, and make sure you go to YouTube and subscribe at FF Advice Net on the Fantasy Football Advice Network channel, because you'll be getting us all season long with video content. Again, make sure you check us out. We'll be back again tomorrow and the next day with Dr. Brian Scott talking about injuries and Chas Filardi of Sports Betting Weekly, because we want to line your pockets along with winning some fantasy football matchups. Until then, we'll see you guys then.